Hi, I'm Paul Guppy. I'm senior researcher at the Washington Policy Center, and this is our regular update that we send out to all of our members to let them know what we're up to and what current issues we're working on, and particularly where we see that we're having an impact in this important election year that's coming up. So to start off, speaking of election year, it's been a lot of debate at the national level about Vice President Harris when she made her presentation about price gouging and that prices are too high. And we understand from a political point of view that she is trying to express sympathy for the inflation that everybody is experiencing and build support for her campaign that way. And we get that. The part where we come in is through economics education. We just point out in a neutral way that in a private competitive market, the price gouging is always going to cost some grocery store, that it's not just that they can set whatever price they want and make as much money as they want. So what we always point out, and we provide this across the board through the year, is that when it comes to basic economic education, private sector competition is the best force for keeping prices low and making sure consumers get the best deal. So when this issue comes up at the national level, we also weigh in again with that basic information. And what we point out to people is anytime one private sector player feels like they're going to price gouge, quote unquote, all they're actually doing is creating an opening for their competitors to take away their customers. And we know that many people in government do not understand this concept. And what we want to do is educate the public. So when they hear messages from various campaigns, they're able to make an assessment about what is the real cause of inflation. Guess what? Recently, it's been over government spending at both the state and the federal level, and that it is not vigorous competition that's happening in the private sector. And we also point out, and we're happy to be controversial about this, that if you want to look for price gouging, and that the private sector doesn't have any monopoly on greed, that's for sure. And it's units of government, whether it's Sound Transit, the city of Seattle, Washington State, even the federal government. We have never seen a government entity that is not interested in getting more of your money. So we provide that counterbalance because we know the private sector gets attacked all the time. Capitalism gets attacked by people on the left. And we point out that if you're looking for greed, you should maybe check out your local or state government or even the federal government. And in a positive way, we are always trying to point out practical reforms that definitely work. So in Seattle, for example, where they say they have a housing crisis, we point out if you lowered the property tax, housing would be more affordable for everybody. If you lowered sales taxes, Seattle, for example, has a 10.3% sales tax, one of the highest in the country. Washington State as a whole has a 6.5% sales tax. If lawmakers lowered the sales tax by even 1 percentage point, it would reduce inflation across the board for everybody, and that's fair. So economic education is something that we work on all the time, and as issues come up at the state and even federal level, we weigh in with the truth and really try to provide that perspective to show that price gouging doesn't necessarily come from the private sector. Another area that I wanted to touch on is we're excited with new information that we're putting out regarding all 4 ballot initiatives. People will begin receiving ballots in the mail in the next few weeks. We have always been part of educating the public about ballot initiatives. As all our supporters know, we do not get involved in politics or campaigns or candidates. But when it comes to ideas, we feel that an educated electorate can make the best decisions about what ballot measure should pass or should not pass. As our supporters certainly know, there are 4 key ballot issues on the ballot this year. Those initiatives would make the long-term care payroll tax optional, repeal the capital gains tax, repeal the natural gas ban that the legislature passed in just the final days of the session, and then also repeal Governor Inslee's carbon tax. We are putting out a citizen's guide on each of those that provides an overview. We're also providing a resource to the media to provide information about how those initiatives would work. Each one of those initiatives would reduce the financial burden that the government places on the public. We think that moves in the right direction. A good example is Todd Meyer's involvement with the Initiative 2117, it's called, to repeal the carbon tax. Todd was just in a debate with hosted by the Seattle Times editorial board. He's arguing with folks on the other side. One point that came up was the other side said, well, hey, Todd, you can't guarantee that gas prices would go down if Initiative 2117 were to pass. Todd, because it's not a quote gas tax. And Todd pointed out that, well, yeah, it is a gas tax. It's a tax on all energy. Our research showed that it adds at least 46 cents a gallon to the price of gas. That has been backed up by independent sources. Todd has also pointed out that, speaking of greed and competition, if oil companies are gouging people, then why is gas so much cheaper in Oregon and Idaho than it is in Washington? The only factor that's different is we have this carbon tax. So in response to this challenge, Todd actually asked the opponents if they would like to bet that if Initiative 2117 passes, will gas prices go down by 15 cents a gallon? He made it very reasonable. Not surprisingly, none of them took him up on it. There was even a point where one of the Seattle Times editorial writers themselves had to jump in and say, oh, we're not going to allow any betting here. They clearly were trying to defend their own side. But Todd just went public with that. So he has a standing offer for anyone on the left who wants to bet him $100 to charity that gas prices will go down at least 15 cents a gallon, if not more, if Initiative 2117 passes. This might sound like kind of a petty argument or dispute, but we use that in order to convey the information about how important the carbon tax is, how important the initiative is, and to provide information about how it would work. So we're going to stay on top of that issue. Next is Charles, our transportation expert, has been very involved with trying to encourage the state to improve ferry service across Puget Sound and in the San Juan Islands. We have reported extensively that the ferry service is behind in their work. They're cutting hours. They don't have enough boats. And all of this stems from something that people in state government never want to mention. And that is an executive order that Governor Inslee signed in 2018 that required that all new ferries be hybrid electric ferries. Charles has pointed out that this policy has delayed the purchase of 2 to 4 new ferry boats by at least 10 years. They are only getting around to getting bids to build new ferries now to add 2 more. They are converting 2 ferries by taking them out of service, loading them up with batteries, trying to get them back into service. And we're providing the independent voice that says, makes that connection between policy decisions that were made by the governor and the fact that cars are sitting on the dock waiting for a ferry boat, and that service has been canceled, and that the ferry service is not reaching its standards that it has promised to the public. Charles has been interviewed by Como 4 News. He's written about it. He's posted online. And we know that the Department of Transportation and the governor's office is very familiar with the work that he's doing. That is applying consistent pressure to get the ferry service to perform. And again, as we always do, we provide positive reforms, suggestions, ideas that would get the ferry service working. Charles has worked with, provided information to people in the legislature saying that if the 2018 executive order were repealed or overturned by the legislature, number one, and number two, if the legislature were to authorize clean diesel technology with new ferries, we could cut the time to deliver ferries in half, and the public would get better service. Another issue that Charles has been involved in is he was invited by the Seattle News Channel to provide an independent perspective about the street levy that is coming up. This is just in the Seattle area. As our supporters know, we are not only a Seattle-focused organization, we are a statewide organization. But we still want to stay engaged with Seattle issues because there's not a lot of variety of opinion here. News organizations have trouble finding experts that can debate both sides of the issues. And often there's just proposals like these new taxes are just steamrolled through. In Charles's case, he was contacted by the producer of the show. He's going to be providing an independent view. He's not going to be against the levy or for the levy, but it's $1.5 billion to provide street maintenance over and above the $7 billion that the city collects every year already. So what Charles is going to be pointing out is people are paying taxes, they are looking for good service, and yet they want to almost double this levy in order to continue it for the future. At a minimum, we think that people should hear both sides of the issue so they can make a good decision. And with that, I'll wrap up. That's what we're working on. Our main focus is providing information related to the election coming up. We have our 2 dinners that are coming up in the fall in Spokane on September 20th with Dennis Prager, and in Bellevue on October 25th with General Jack Keane and Molly Hemingway. We are getting great table sponsorships, selling tickets. Those events are filling up. I encourage you to check our website if you are interested in attending. As people who have come in the past know, these evening events are a lot of fun, and we learn a lot from the speakers that are there. So we hope to see you there. And with that, I'll be back in the future with another update. Thanks.